Bob, it's so great to see you again. It's been a long time. How you doing?
I could not be better, Naftali.
Thank you. And I really appreciate you coming on because I wanted to pick your brain. I've had the opportunity to work with you in the past and to really understand how creative you are, at least a little bit, as well as how well networked you are. And I do want to unpack that a little bit as we're talking about recession proofing. You are blank, the whole series I've been doing now on a variety of different topics as a response to Corona, as COVID-19 has been such a game changer for us. So tell us a little bit, Bob, how has it affected you? And kind of like as you're looking out a little bit, sort of like a two-part question here, what are your thoughts about the future of Corona? Like, how do you see it changing for us personally and or professionally?
Sure. Well, I can tell you, just in my professional life, there were several live training events that we had scheduled that had to be rescheduled. But look, for years, I've been pretty comfortable and have done a lot of virtual work already. And so, that part really didn't change a ton for me. It was obviously an inconvenience rescheduling those training events, the live training events. But I'll tell you, the other paradigm for me is my wife is the office and business manager for a gymnastics gym. And they were, by order of the governor, forced to close as of March 17th, and they're preparing to reopen as soon as they're given the okay. But for several weeks, she was working from home, and so that was a completely different paradigm because my office is at home, and so I had the opportunity to have more conversations with her, and that was always, that's nice. We've been
It
married
is.
25 years this year, Naftali. It's I can't even believe, but time flies.
It sure
Um,
does. And
yeah,
you're hitting on an important point, because obviously from a very practical level, people who have non-essential businesses are work or just have chosen to work from home, all of that is our current new normal. And yet at the same time, we're kind of like looking out to the future and thinking about this, again, if you're dealing with a business where there's a lot of proximity, a lot of potential concern about corona, such as the airline industry, you mentioned a gym, your wife's business. I can imagine there being some lingering effects there, but I could even see some changes moving forward. Some of them not necessarily bad. You talk about relationships. I'm talking to people about how maybe there'll be more opportunity for remote work, maybe more opportunity for people just feeling comfortable working differently and maybe cutting down on commutes and just having more personal time or more reflective time. Any thoughts on that?
well, yeah, it's been my observation that a lot of things that are have been forced upon us were changes that were occurring in the world anyway, in both in business and in education and some other areas. And so this COVID-19 pandemic simply accelerated those changes. And the other thing that I've observed in terms of business is that companies were forced to find other ways to add value to customers so that they could survive, over these few weeks or a few months or however long it happens to be. And the smartest of those companies didn't just look at it as a way to survive, but they looked at it as a way to add additional value that can continue after the pandemic, has sort of left us. And I'll give my wife's gymnastics gym. I'll give that as an example. They were forced to find another way other than in-person classes, and so they started doing Zoom classes. Well, what they found, and this is still a new paradigm, so they're still getting used to it. But what they found is that opened up an entire new marketplace for them, that
Yeah.
they're not just limited to the local geographic area where they are, but they can actually, the owner of that gym is a pretty famous gymnast in his time. And so they're able to serve customers in a much wider geographical area through doing Zoom classes and virtual training.
So
So in the
yeah,
long run,
I don't
it's
want to
going to
cut
be
you.
a
I don't want to
positive.
cut you off here, but I think that that's a brilliant point, and I do want to stay on it for just a moment because you talked about like finding the new opportunity as well as finding the value. and how do you articulate the value for somebody, maybe either differently because you're changing the value, or just better because the value is always there, but you didn't necessarily articulate it in the same kind of way. So because I feel comfortable asking you, because I feel that this is kind of like in your wheelhouse, how do you go about doing that? Let's say I'm a business owner, I'm a service provider, whatever it might be. How do I go about thinking a little bit differently? So minimally, people have a different perception that they have a perception that I can be useful now. And maybe that I think and they think as a result differently about what I'm able to do moving forward so that I can expand my opportunity, just like the gym owner is doing, as you're describing.
One of the things that I always recommend, it's so easy to become complacent in business. And it's when things are good, um, and you're not forced to do things like that, look at other ways to serve, then you usually don't. But for the business owners who get in that habit of always looking at, hey, this is good, but in what ways can we serve better? A mantra that drives myself personally in our company is, in what ways can we add more value to more people, and continually asking that question. And when you do that, when you ask that question, in what ways could we serve more people, add more value to more people? When you continually ask that, you'll find them, because they'll come to you seemingly out of the blue. And I think when you're always looking for that next level, when you're committed to innovation, you're really going to leave, I think, your competitors wondering how you keep pulling that rabbit out of the hat.
Right. And I think that's great. So let's stay there for a little bit longer and tell me, obviously you could be asking yourself that question, you could be asking your team that question, and you'll get certain answers. Who else would you consider asking that question to, so that you're always getting the most relevant feedback, useful feedback that's going to help you? Because sometimes we can't, we kind of create a little box around ourselves, and we have a certain way of thinking, and in many cases it served us very nicely. When the market's doing well, we don't necessarily have to be super creative in order to find people that are interested in what we can do. But to your point, how do you go beyond that?
Well, I mean, certainly you can ask your customers, but part of the challenge with that is sometimes customers don't really know what they want because they don't know what's possible. I think Henry Ford famously said, "If I asked people what they wanted, they would have told me a faster horse." And so you can certainly do that. But I think maybe even more importantly than asking more people is asking better questions. And one of the things that people have a tendency to default to the same thinking. You and that's really, it's rooted in biology. We looked at a problem before. This is the solution we came up with. We didn't die, and so that's the default. It just becomes our habitual way of thinking. And so by asking different types of questions, people think they're thinking, but in reality, they're just driving 100 miles an hour around a circular freeway. And so one of the advantages to the training that we do on how to think more creatively is those creative thinking methodologies give you an exit ramp from that circular freeway and help you see things that were previously invisible to you.
Yeah, I love it. And I think that the idea here also is that you can never get complacent. You always have to be thinking differently because, frankly, like I said before, you never know when getting off the exit ramp early will be the best strategy for you. Finding new opportunities now, because who's to say that what we're doing now will serve us in the future, will serve our customers in the future. So constantly thinking about it, constantly asking the right questions, asking better questions. This is all great. So, Bob, I'm going to put you on the proverbial hot seat with just a couple of minutes left. And I wanted to ask you specifically about business networking, because I know that that's an area that I've benefited from your outreach and your engagement and whatnot. And at the same time, how can a person leverage, and you've got about 60 seconds just to frame
Okay.
this, to answer the
Mhm.
question, how can a person leverage business networking? Well, when I say today, I'm thinking even pre-corona, but certainly moving forward, so that if ever you needed to be able to lean on others, you really have the foundation in place because you have proactively built your foundation and your network.
Yeah, I think the most important aspect of that, Naftali, is attitude. And it's an attitude of always adding value to the people that you engage with. When you're having an initial conversation with somebody, when I first started out in business, I was pretty naive and I thought business networking was giving my elevator pitch to as many people as possible. That's counterproductive. I think when you keep the focus initially on that other person and you ask, how can I help this person? You're creating that circle of value that, just like a mirror, it's always going to be reflected back to you, even if it's not immediate. So when you keep your focus on the other person and adding value to them, and whatever way, whether that benefits you or not, one of the big things I like to do, which you're probably familiar with, is who do I know that this person needs to know? Who would be a good referral partner or a collaborator or just a good connection to have? So that's a good, probably a way to start.
Excellent. Yeah. And I had Ivan Meisner from BNI on my podcast some time ago, and he talked similarly. So that was really great. Anyway, Bob, I wish we could talk longer on this. There's so much that you would add, I'm sure, to the conversation, but really great catching up with you.